Hey guys, I'm Sam with Scrappy Industries. Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to start taking apart the 50-ton Talbert to rebuild it. As you can see, we got a little bit of snow right now, but it is on the brink of turning to rain. They're calling for 2 inches of rain this weekend, so we need to get this trailer pulled apart, pull the deck off the back tires, and I'm going to start with the back tires, pulling the axles off. Let's get them in the shop before we get soaked. We'll let them both warm up a little bit, figure out what we're gonna do. So we need to get this picked up and pulled out of here. And I'm just gonna take those 2 bolts out and pull the back part off, and we'll carry that into the shop. I think if I grab a couple shackles, or maybe 1 shackle, we can just pick the front of the neck with the hoe, pull it forward. That way we don't have to get the truck out here and hooked up and all that. Get her hooked up. Full frozen to the ground. Probably don't want these super tight, I guess. Wheel picker, step 1. Oh, no problem. I'm gonna get that block of wood out of there. It might be frozen to the ground. And now it's not. I like to set Lowboys on wood just so that that steel isn't down in the dirt while they're sitting for a long time. And this is why I like not having, one of the reasons I like not having spring brakes on a Lowboy. So we need to pull those couple bolts out. And then I think I'm just gonna set this down and come in with the Volvo and pick it off. So we need to have blocks under the back once we take those bolts off. No, 170, she's a trooper. There was a lot more snow and everything there than I was thinking when I started backing up over that. But we got there. I bet all this stuff is perfectly frozen today. Oh, there we go. This one's drier. And there's our electric cord. Okay, raise it down. Bumpy ride on the frozen tracks. Yard of dirt on them. All right, grab a Volvo. Let's see, I don't know if I've ever picked this up with the neck on it. I've done it with the beam. I'm gonna say that our center of gravity is pretty far forward. Maybe not that far forward. Oh, you nailed it. Oopsies. I guess the wood's a little frozen. Oh well, we tried. I think this guy actually chained around the bolsters. See how she does. Got her. Our modular trailer's just the best. Oopsies. Nailed it. I love it. So this thing won't fit through the door sideways, so we have to grab it long ways like this in order to get it in the shop. I was kind of hoping we could just grab it out here in the middle somewhere. I think she'll pick her no problem. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think your bolster's supposed to look like that. And it's those opposite two. Both have that going on. But that's why we're giving her some love. These things happen. All right, if for nothing else, let's do a little video documentation of how things were plumbed, how things are mounted, because we are going to just start gutting. All the brake chambers on this trailer are non-spring brake, meaning that there's no parking brake. It's only, when air goes in, the brakes go on. I prefer this with a Lowboy. As you just saw, we were moving it around with the excavator, no problem at all. The air's leaked out because it's sat for a couple weeks now. If you have a Lowboy, you set it on the ground, so you really don't need a parking brake, in my opinion. I've never run into a situation where I did. If you're on a super steep hill, you can apply these brakes, but not for parking, basically with the trolley valve on the side of the steering wheel. But that being said, we basically have your typical tandem style relay valve. So what this valve would have coming to it, one of these would go to the reservoir, which is this bottom guy going to this tank. So one of these would be the supply from the truck. The other one would be the blue, the service line from the truck telling it what to apply. But that air doesn't actually do the application. The air for the application comes from the tank and comes from the truck's emergency red line. I'm not 100% sure which side's which. We'll figure that out before we just cut them, or at least have this noted. But it would tell you on the top of this valve, I believe, service and emergency. So those lines come back here in a very not great way. This air tank looks like it's in bad shape. I'm going to say we'll replace that air tank and that air tank. I want to eliminate that air tank. It would have got added after the fact. It should not be here. You can see they welded those brackets in. We're going to cut all that out. This thing has way too much air tank on it. It takes forever to fill it up with the truck. So we eliminate that tank. We're back to what the factory was. We'll put 2 new tanks in. They're both pretty rough shape. Tanks are cheap. Cheap insurance. From that tank, we also have to get back and fill that up. That's where the T would come into play here, with one of these being the emergency line. The other one would have to go back and be the emergency line, and it's all just kind of set up in a repeat situation. Back here, you would have basically the emergency line coming in. That blue line would be the tank, and then over there we still have the relay service valve. The relay service valve, the blue line, it would have to continue on and go back to the plug for the 4th axle. If you didn't have 4th axle provisions, that would just kind of end at that valve. And then to get the air for the airbags and everything, it's kind of hard to see from the bottom here. They had it plumbed on the top of this tank. You have a 90 PSI back pressure valve, essentially, pressure protection valve of sorts. You have to have 90 PSI of air to charge the airbags. That way, if a bag blows out, you'll maintain 90 PSI in the tanks at all times for braking. So it doesn't cause a safety issue for braking if you'd blow an airbag, basically is what the goal is there. That's all done on the top side. It's not rocket science, basically what we have going on with the airbag plumbing. I'm gonna change that anyhow, because if you guys remember, this truck was set up with 2 leveling valves. We're gonna go to 1 leveling valve. It's a much simpler, better system in my opinion. This trailer would have had a single leveling valve from the factory. The only thing I really have been around with too is the Ford has 2 leveling valves in the back. Basically you can lean the truck with them. And I've never had a problem with it. I've also never really screwed with them, so we're really well enough alone. As far as taking this apart, I don't know. I'm gonna take all the wheels and tires off first. I don't know if we wanna take the U-bolts off the axles and just let them fall. My original thought was we're gonna pull these pins on the suspension beams because I wanna rebush them anyway. So we're gonna pull those and maybe just pull the whole axle and everything out, then work on cutting the U-bolts free. Those are the ones we already had out earlier this summer, so they should just unwind off of there, hopefully. Everything else probably gonna get the torch. All right, let's see what you're made of, old Forge 12.0. We got a fresh Forge 12.0, and we got another one on the charger that was like half charged. And we're gonna find out how far we can make it around this thing on the first battery. Well, she did it on 2 bars of the old Forge 12.0, so I'm impressed by that. Our only downside, so this wheel had 1.5" hex instead of 33 millimeter. It's like an old Bud style, but you can see their hub pilot. I've never seen that before. But of course, the last one we were messing with, the stud pushed in, and now we're screwed. So I'm gonna have to come in here with the torch and just cut that off. First time cutting with this new torch. Nothing to it. Next, we need to take these air lines off. They're crimped on the chamber side, so we have to take them off over here at the valve. These guys will fit in there a little easier. Will our main hinge bolt turn? Sweet. It's going. So these are the U-bolts we already changed. They were nice and free. And just buzzed them off without much effort. Ugh. Still not quite free, are we? Odie, what's it going to take? Ugh. Our bolts out of that pivot. Okay, yeah, we could fold that around. And she's free. So my plan in taking this apart was I figured we'll re-bush this. Yeah, it could use it. We'll put new bushings in all this while it's out. So we'll put new bushings in that. We'll have brand new axles. These pads will be replaced and all that jazz. We have to weld on our new adapters to the new axles. And now we can basically get down in here, blast and paint all this area much better now too. So all the rest of these U-bolts, I'm just gonna go after them with the torch. Remember the struggle we had getting those two off, and we ended up torching, I think, one of the whole U-bolts or half of the bolts anyway. I've already got these 4 bolts out of the axle beam, out of the suspension beam, but we have not been able to break free the 2 on the front axle, so I'm gonna have to figure out how we're gonna get those main bolts broken free. We'll figure a way. I mean, even if we have to heat the nut, maybe our next go-to, and still try with the impact. Otherwise, I'll have to get a torque multiplier we can borrow and try to use that. To try and get these front axle hinge pins out, I'm going to try heating the nut a little bit and leaning on her with the impact and seeing what we can make happen. Of course, it's all turning. We'll cut it on this side so we can drive it easier. At least it's all free now. Nailed it. Got it. Yeah, I think bushings are ready to go. They're pretty dry. All right, that first axle, we've unhooked the air lines. It is 100% free. Ready to pluck out of there. This first axle, obviously the suspension beams are out of the way. We cut the chains off, the limiting chains. Air lines are unhooked. It's free to go. We still got 3 more suspension beams and some air lines to get off. Nailed it. The bolts broke on this airbag. Maybe we didn't fully break her free. Cutting off our bolts. There it is. We're like at the very limits of what the old Volvo can reach here. We need the jib pole on her. We got Mr. Impact Tester over there. Does it work? No. No? With Bunny? No. Is Bunny helping run the impact? No. Give her the beans. That's right. Sounds like a vacuum. Well, I'm over unscrewing airlines, so we are onto this. We're gonna be replumbing it anyway, differently than it is now. Hi, Lane. That's right, we need to take that air tank off. Ding, ding. Alrighty guys, we pulled out all our air lines and power cords, and I just hacked and tacked, and they're now over there in the trash can. We're gonna replumb this thing from scratch anyway, so that doesn't concern me a bit. The other things I wanna do while it's upside down, these air tanks, this one's welded on, so at least cut the welds we get to from the bottom. The airbags, once we get it flipped over, we can pull the nuts off of those. I'm gonna pull the mud flaps off, license plate, all this little stuff. So originally I thought I wanted to eliminate that air tank, but I'd like to add an airlift third axle, and all that airbag and everything's gonna have to happen kind of in this vector. So maybe we wanna leave that tank and just delete this tank altogether. Either way, I think I wanna get that one out of there for the sake of cleaning and painting and make it able to bolt in. So they welded it here and here. Be nice if we could just redo those feet, maybe move it forward an inch, drill holes, put 4 bolts in it. Now New Way is who did this whole suspension. Talbert would have bought these risers, the beams, all that jazz from New Way. And they put this tag riveted on here, and you can see how the scale, it just started. And look at that, you just start picking at something like this, and there's nothing left, there's just holes in it. So I had taken the bar to this side, and as you can see, we have a monstrous hole. So you gotta be careful of those riveted on tags. This side that didn't have the tags, you can see it's, not that it's perfect, but it's not like the other side. I'm thinking the other side will end up just cutting, and you have this brace here, so maybe we can cut kind of behind that and patch in a piece. The bottom of these bolsters definitely have me a little concerned. I want to see what we got. I guess they're not all that thick, no matter what, no matter which way you cut it. See, being that this is a New Way suspension and everything, I think these are the exact same bushings as the Ford, and you slide that to align it and then weld them wherever you're happy with it. If you guys remember when we did the rear suspension on that truck last year, and we had to do some alignment. This trailer seemed to be in alignment. We're just going to replace the bushings and leave that alone. I'm hoping we can just kind of cut out the cancer here, weld in a new piece on both of these hangers. I don't think you should be able to do that to your main hanger. I just rigged up the hollow ram cylinder here. We're going to try to pull that bushing out. This will work, hopefully, just like it did when we did it on the Ford last fall. Otis, you coming to help? Ready? Go ahead. It's okay to get dirty. Is it going? Maybe? See, we're moving that out. We're pulling a bushing. Well, my end of initial teardown, I feel a little bit down on this. I didn't count on the bolsters being this bad and having to be replaced, but I cut another hole here and it's just the same. There's 2 vertical pieces in there, so you have like 3 areas and they're all just as bad. There's so much scale you can't even cut through with a torch because that scale won't burn the way the steel will. So they're gonna have to get cut off and we'll build new ones. Not the end of the world, but it's just one more thing, of course. So I guess maybe tomorrow night, I don't know, I'm out of gas. Maybe tomorrow night we'll start cutting all these welds out of here. You know, we got to cut all this off and everything down around that main rail and get that whole thing kind of flushed out of there. And then we can draw up our new bolsters. So we're going to figure out our design. I'm going to take some measurements on the main I-beams and the existing bolsters so we can kind of come up with something that's similar to these. I don't think I'm going to make it exactly the same. I don't know how I feel yet about putting holes in the bottom for drainage. I know I said earlier I think it's dumb that these are sealed, But at the same rate, they made it 30 years, so they're not that bad of a design. And if you start putting holes in there, then as the tires are throwing everything, you know, up into the holes. So it's the same problem I think you could potentially have of getting more stuff in there. I don't know what is the less of the evils, but we'll do a little research on bolster design and everything like that. I need to get all the new wave bushings ordered up for the suspension. I tried a little more pulling, seals are leaking, everything else on our Ram setup, so we need parts there. It just wasn't like a glorious ending to this, I guess, if you will. Not complaining, just complaining. We'll get it figured out. All right, well, deciding that these bolsters are junk, we got to get on with cutting off the old ones. So step one in that, we're running the torch all the way around and getting them removed from the trailer. And I could say they're so bad that it is both easy and difficult. Easy in that, for instance, the back one over here is cracked the entire way across the bottom. I don't have to cut anything. And the one here on the front is hard, and they're all gonna have this problem. They're so scaled up, the torch doesn't even want to cut through them. Basically, you're cutting through the steel, it hits the scale, and it stops. You'll see what I'm talking about. Let's get back to cutting. So this guy, I've come around the front, the back, and the bottom now. Shaky, shaky. This guy just started, and I realized, hey, I need to film. I started down this side here. So you can see this crack runs all along the bottom, kind of wraps down underneath the fairways. And these have just had the weld just piled on them here. My new design, I kept that like halfway down so we can lay a good weld in on a 1/2 inch of meat there instead of just trying to make a butt weld. I don't think that was too smart on Talbert's part, but we'll fix that. My bolsters also look like Swiss cheese that I've drawn up. I'll show you guys them here in a little bit. I brought the lead I need to run the air arc off the MIG welder in case we want to use that to clean everything up. So this is my new bolster design. You can see what I was going for on being able to hook the hooks into the top and outside of it. I also figure we can get the sandblaster down in there and the paint gun down in there so that we can get a good coating on these and not have them scale up. And then when we're washing the trailer, we're going to take the pressure washer, wash the dirt and salt down out of the center of them. That is, of course, going to accumulate, but hopefully we can keep everything in check and they won't rot off on us. So right now I'm trying really hard not to damage these main frame rails, just stay away from the eye. So I want to get these cut off. Once it's out of the way, we'll go back and clean all that up better. So what I mean by that is we kind of left a fair bit of margin here. Just, I don't want to damage that. Nailed it! So, in an attempt to keep my lungs somewhat pink during this operation, I am wearing a respirator because this is some pretty nasty, scaly crap we're dealing with here. Between the paint and the scale, if we were just cutting steel, I don't think it would be as bad, but it's definitely not super great, so we're going to be keeping this on most of the night. Knock some of the scale out because I'm really having trouble cutting it. Well, got all the bolsters cut off from the bottom, and now we're ready to flip it over and chop off the top. But I'm ready for bed, so we're calling it a night here. We'll be back on this tomorrow. So before I flip this over out in the driveway, I dug out the scale by hand that I could quickly out of the suspension, and man, it's bad. You could see how much is scaled out of these brackets. Now obviously that side we know we got to replace the outside parts. Maybe we need to do a little more, I don't know. Oh, it's cold and we're letting all the heat out. Let's get her. Below that suspension, that's what I'm a little bit concerned about. At the same time, I think we need a new air tank anyway, so we're just gonna go with that. New air tank time. What do you think, Oat? Oh, that poor trailer. I think we're gonna need these for the back. We'll just let the front sit on the flow. Well, let's finish what we started. Get her chopped off, and that chopped off, and those chopped off. Let's chop them. Yeah, that's bad. Take a look at all this deliciousness. Hopefully the frame cleans up. I can't believe just this massive pile just hanging out there, dirt, rust. Hit that with the scaler, but I don't know. I think that web is mostly there, fortunately. All right, we got to cut this guy off and then work our way around. Of course, the million-dollar question here. Oh man. Poor frame. Wow. Yeah, it's bad. Well, a lot of that was scale built up kind of on there, I think. We'll hit it with the needle scaler next. We're going to try and level up here. Man, now that was both bolsters, but look at the pile. And that doesn't count how much is still in these things. Oh, the poor trailer. The good news is the web seems to be relatively okay. The flange has some pretty deep pitting and corrosion in it, as you can see there. But the good news is this is a 1-inch thick flange, so there's a lot of meat there. Maybe we'll fill in some of the super deep ones. But like I said, I think this is that T1 steel that you have to heat, use the appropriate wire, and then cool slowly. But yeah, be careful what you leave go here. Now, that's what 30 years of being sealed off will do. The spring hangers are pretty bad as well. I think we're going to end up drawing these, making new spring hangers as well. I was originally thinking we'd cut out and patch, but I don't know. I think it's going to be just as easy just to cut all this off and start over. We can turn these out on the lathe just like we did for the Ford and just weld this up. But now we need to take everything off the trailer all the way that we just kind of quickly cut off, getting the bolsters out of the way. So we're going to go with air arcing for this. Now I have very limited experience air arcing. You guys have seen most of it. But this old MIG welder here seemed to work way better than the newer inverter machine. So we're going to start with that and some 3/16 rod that I'm going to try and in like the 200-ish amp range. It's a 250 amp machine, so I just want to stay backed out of full bore a little bit. Let's see what we can make happen. On fire. You can see how well that works for carefully getting in there and not gouging the crap out of the frame. I like that. Good job. All right, you got it. Next. Hold on. I gotta get the lid. Stop. Stop. Hey. Leg, stop. Stop. Okay, go ahead. Got it. Good job. You took that off. Now we got these bolsters hacked off. I'm gonna drag all 4 of these bolsters outside because we're really kind of turning into a disaster zone in here. Sweep up this amount of dirt and we'll jump on the air arc and work on cutting the top plates off of this side as well as cleaning up everything else. So we're flipped back over now, and I wanted to check the dimensions on my new spring hangers that I drew up before we ordered all that material. This is kind of the markups I've made, just little dimensions here and there. Pretty much all of them need bumped around, but I kind of got it roughed in. I just came to the conclusion that making our own is our easiest way out of this whole mess, and we'll know that they're sturdy. I asked a company about buying new ones of these through New Way, and they're like, oh, we need your serial number and your part number, and I'm like, how am I gonna read that? Yeah, I'll just do it myself, because I'm sure they weren't gonna be cheap. And this is a pretty cheap part to make. We already drew up these bushings for the forge, so they're easy enough to turn out on the CNC lathe. We'll get the steel burnout for this, just these couple bends. I'll just weld up these corners here on these brackets, because this would be a huge gooseneck punch to reach in there on a press brake. See, you can't come straight down through this, so your punch actually has to come out and around and take all that force. So I don't have the tooling to make that happen, and I think it'll be easier to maintain the accurate width by just spacing off of this plate, and then this plate will be the same width, and then we'll just have that open outside corner, just fill her up with weld real nice and hot. I'm not sure if we're gonna make new shock brackets or if we'll just cut those ones off and reuse them. I don't think that would be terrible either. But we can get to cutting. This had to come off anyway because I want to put an airlift third axle on, so we're gonna have to weld some C-channel on there, make some brackets to do all that. So that was coming off anyway. We'll just take the torch, buzz all this off. Let's get to it. Got it. Hey, Shaver, you got a big machining job? Everything's gonna be recalibrated over there. So instead of making new ones of these, I'm gonna attempt to reuse them. I think I can cut them all out of this bracket easy, Yogi. And I'll get new triangles burned out. So if we can just kind of burn that off and burn this out of there and get it into the lathe, we'll clean up all the crap that's left. Let's see how well we can clean this up in the lathe. I'm gonna grab it from this side first, basically put a big chamfer to cut all that off, face that off, and then we can flip it around and true this up to get rid of that weld there as well. Take things nice and easy. For the sake of welding, I don't think it had one. I didn't touch the diameter from where we had it. I just wheeled off, flipped the part around, and came back in, so it should match up pretty well. I can feel a little movement in the tool post from this intermittent cut, just kind of the cross slide, the compound and everything got a little give to it. She's old and tired. And there's our part. We'll weld right on top of that. She's ready to go back on the new hangers. Well guys, that wraps up most all the teardown on the back part of our 50-ton Talbert. I've ordered all the steel for the bolsters and the suspension mounts. Actually, the bolster steel came in today, but we still have to bend that. I need to come up with some tooling to mainly make that 1-inch radius on that top corner. So I need some 2-inch round bar. We're gonna weld that onto some flat bar that we can put it in the press brake. But that is, as you can see, about as far as we could go. We're down with the 2 main rails, the rear bolsters. That's about it. I think I'm going to change some of the airbag plates. I ordered 6, like the factory ones, smaller 1/4 inch. They had replaced some of them with these big round ones, and they're not really welded in properly, and I think that's part of why the airbags look so weird. We could just drill a new hole and move the airbag back as tight to the rail as we could. Don't know yet. But that's what we're gonna get into next. We got plenty more fab work to go, and of course, in a complete blast paint and reassembly. I'm Sam with Scrappy Industries. Thanks for watching.